You're listening to the Manning Up on Real Estate podcast with your host, Cameron Manning. We bring you the industry experts each episode who will help you man up on your real estate career. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Manning Up on Real Estate podcast. We are always trying to bring you those guests that are going to help you guys man up on your real estate career. And the next gentleman that I have here, I'm really excited to bring him on. I've been getting to know him over the last few months, and he's out there. He's a go-getter. He's a young guy. So if you guys are listening to this and you're thinking, I can't do this till I'm older, no, this guy is going to show you that this is totally possible. He's from New York City. He's a real estate agent out there that's crushing. And if we all know anything about New York, it's one of the hardest luxury markets to get into and actually crush it in. And he's doing an awesome job with that. I see him as the top agent at his brokerage month after month after month. So ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Nicholas Conti. Welcome to the podcast, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Cameron. How's everything with you?
I can't complain. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast here. Again, you and I have been chopping it up on that Clubhouse app for many, many months now. We've been in many rooms together. So I appreciate getting to know you. And I think that you're an awesome guy, and I think you're going to provide a lot of value here today. So welcome. We're going to dive right into it. So, we're not going to beat around the bush. Let's talk about what got you started in real estate, especially I hope you don't mind if I say it, but you're a young guy, you're 22 years old and you're crushing it right now. What made such a young person decide to get into real estate?
So actually how it worked out was my parents actually had their own brokerage originally. And I sort of grew up in the house filled with real estate. So my mother ran the sales team, and then my father did a lot of construction, did a lot of building, renovating. And on that end, so my mother was really running the office, and then my father was building. And eventually they were looking to settle down and just call it an end to it. And they ended up selling to the company who I work for now. So they sold their office, which was actually one of the number one Century 21s in New York State for a while, to Lafayette Real Estate, which is the current brokerage I am now. But I always had an interest for it, whether it was real estate sales or real estate development. I love all aspects of construction. I've done a flip myself, and sales are just great. I mean, I absolutely love it. I got into the industry. I didn't really want to do that first time home buyers. I sort of knew my gist of where I was going because of the people who I was dealing with and just their attitudes, how they spoke, how they are. I know how I am, and I know first time home buyers take a lot of hand holding, and I'm not a hand holding person. I really just like to make my decision and go. Yeah. So I want to work with clients who are similar to that. So I ended up saying to the brokers of the company and saying, hey, I want to start in luxury real estate. And he said, you're going to start in luxury real estate? And I was like, yeah. I was like, that's what I want to do. And he's like, it's really hard. And he's like, even for a developed agent who's been in the business for years, who's much older than you, they have a hard time. And he's like, you being young and new is going to make it even harder for you. And I said, yeah, well, it's what I want to do. So I'm going to do it. And I ended up just hitting the phone straight away, because what I was told was, look, get in, go on Craigslist, look for 4 rent by owners and start calling them and try to get their listing. It's no harm to the landlord to list with you. The tenant's paying the fee. So do it. So first day in the office, I sat down, and literally within probably an hour of making calls, I just nonstop probably called over 100 calls in an hour, just 4 rent by owners, and hammered them. And I got my first appointment, and I got my first listing on my first day of the office.
Dude, that's awesome.
And I would never forget this experience because nobody was in. The manager wasn't in. The secretary was brand new, started a week before me. And as we all know, the MLS forms are insane to look through when you have no clue what you're looking at. Yeah. So we're searching through these forms, and we're like, what form is this? What's this? What's this? What do we fill out? So I rush over to this guy's house in like 20 minutes, and we ended up getting the listing. Thankfully, nice. I went all by myself, had no experience in it, and I got the listing for the first time. And going back to the luxury side, and the broker saying it was hard, my first listing appointment was a $7.8 million home on the water in an area called Kings Point. That was my very first for sale listing appointment. And it was an expired lead that I cold called, and I ended up going there with my broker owner of the company. Right. So first day you're getting, so I'm assuming that was a lease transaction that you got the appointment for. So that right away you take what you were told and you just ran with it, and boom, first day, first appointment. And it must be pretty funny too, because you got a brand new secretary that's probably doesn't know too much about the industry yet. You're by yourself and you're probably like, yes, Yeah,
and there's no one around to celebrate with you.
exactly. We were just, the secretary was like, "Oh, great job." And I was like, "All right, so what do I need?" And she's like, "I don't know." So we're just like, holy shit. And we're like trying to figure out everything we could do to get these paperwork together and fill out these complicated forms. We have like
Yeah.
20 pieces of papers and we have no clue. And I set the appointment for like 30 minutes after I made the call. And it was like a 20-minute drive to me. So it was all a big rush in the beginning.
Right. And then back to your first listing there. So your first listing was 7 point what, sorry?
About 7.8 million.
7.8 million. And you picked that up by cold calling an expired listing.
Yep.
So here's the thing that I want to ask them, because I do find that a lot of people, they're, especially whether they're young, whether they're experienced, whatever, they just have such an issue with picking up the phone and cold calling. So here you are, you're like, okay, this is what it's going to take. I have no leads. I have no nothing. I just got to like call these people and generate it. So what is your advice, I guess, going on the phones and like calling a luxury listing? And like, what went through your head? What kind of scripts did you use, and how did you land that listing, if you don't mind me asking?
No problem. So it's that fear is always going to be there. It's still, I make a lot of calls and I still have that fear when I first pick up the phone. Always those first 5 calls or first 3 calls are going to be terrifying. And what I do, and something I developed, and I call an area that's completely out of my section. So I'll call somebody who's 50 miles away from me for the first 3 calls. I know I'm not going to go there. If I get the listing, that's great, but I'm not going to try my heart out. It's just to get those jitters out. So I'll call for 3 homeowners, first try out, shake it off. And then after those 3 calls, you start to get, you're in the mode, you're in the mojo and you're calling. And now you could start hammering the sections you like. So you're professional, you're sounding good, you're looking good, and you're ready to roll. That's my system of working through it. You're always going to have those fears. You just have to push past it. And what I always say, I'm 22. When I started, I was 19. There's no 19-year-old buying $5 million houses. I don't care if the guys on TikTok say they're buying $20 million houses at 19. I haven't come across any. So my sphere of influence isn't buying them. So the only way I could get business is by prospecting.
Yeah.
So it's either prospect or sit there and do nothing and look at the wall.
Right.
So it's really no other options. I took scripts and I've looked at a lot of scripts. There was one gentleman, his name's Ricky Caruth. I actually liked his script. I took my company script, and I took multiple other scripts and just added them all together. And I found it's hard to sound good. So I started adding things into myself, adding personal touches.
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going? The weather's looking good, and just throw your own touch to it. And it's going to become one of yourself. And then you're going to have that on the back of your hand to help you speak clear, speak nice. And you're still following a script, but it's off the script.
Yeah.
And you're going to sound as transparent and as real as possible.
Yeah. So you have the touch points that you want to hit, but you're just using them as a guide versus like, hello, welcome, whatever.
Yeah. Exactly. And you don't want to ramble, because you'll face like, oh, if this guy asks me a hard question, you'll be rambling for a little bit. But you want to have, that's the good part about the script. The scripts are going to answer the hard questions, but you're going to be the one to actually speak with him, build rapport, and close the appointment. That was my whole thing. 100%. So that's really why I started cold calling. It's really one of my still main ways I get business: cold calling and door knocking and postcards. Prospecting all throughout is really my only way of getting business.
That's awesome. Now, one of the questions I have, and I know it comes up, I've heard it before, and to me, it's a misconception, and I think this is going to be great for you to answer. But everyone always says, when they have family that's been in the business for 15, 20, 30 years, whatever the case might be, it's super easy for somebody to just like step into the parent's business. But what it already sounds like you went and did is you didn't jump on that. You went right into what you had to do to prospect. So what would you say to people who say that's the case? You've got family in the business, you've got the edge that you've been around it, but are they sitting there just like handing out leads or not? No.
So that's another funny and good point. So yeah, a lot of people assume that. And my secretary actually is always there to completely X that off the book, because she watched me, does it hours upon hours. I'm here at 8 a.m., 8:30 in the morning. I'm the first one in. And really, they worked in a completely different area. So their brokerage was in Queens. I work in North Shore, Nassau County, and I do Queens and Brooklyn for investment properties mostly. but they were in that 500,000 to $1 million range. They did some big, like everybody, sometimes they'll get big transactions, but they weren't doing luxury property. They've never sold luxury properties. They weren't selling 4, 5, 6, 8, $10 million homes. So we were in a completely different sphere. I didn't really like that sphere. I I sort of wanted to go for the hard stuff. It was just who I am naturally, because like I always felt that like that market would be a lot easier to tackle in terms of cold calling, not just because of volume, but because of the people who they are. And I'm known, my father, they know him. A lot of people may know him. It may be easy. So I said, no, I want to go for like the hardest market in the hardest area, which is the market I chose and where I got my first listing appointment for.
Yeah.
And it was just something I really wanted to do. Exactly. Yeah. I wanted to make it hard. I wanted the challenge because I knew I was going to learn, and that was going to help me later on down the line.
Awesome. No, I appreciate that. And I do think that's a big misconception a lot of people have. And I've seen it time and time again where, you might join the family business. They're sending you the leads because now they're getting tired and they just want you to handle it. But I've seen so many young people that say, hey, I've been surrounded by this, but I can do it bigger, better, whatever the case might be. And you decide to set yourself apart and build your own brand. Right now, you do have that competitive edge that you grew up around it. So it gave you that slight starting knowledge. But I'm inspired by the fact that you just did that. You went in the office, you're 8 a.m., you're grinding out your calls and doing what you need to do because, for a 22-year-old, most 22-year-olds I know, they're still hitting the beach, going to the clubs, all that stuff. You're out there and you're grinding and you're doing work, right?
Yeah, look, I love the club. I still go to the clubs at night. It's a work-life balance. But another great thing. So besides me calling, I just hired my first VA as well last month, which is making the calls for me too. So get double the hands on it and get double the voices calling. And it's been working. It's a great system, but you can't hire a VA from what I've learned. You can't hire a VA without having that experience first. Yeah. You have to put in that work to train them because you want to train them like yourself. So just recently, without a month being in, after 2-3 weeks, he's finally getting the hang of it. And after training and going through and me following up and speaking with him daily, it's a difficult thing to do, but it's something definitely worth it. And another great prospecting tool is door knocking. I like door knocking a lot as well. I door knock like 3 times a week, 2-3 times a week, some weeks.
So you're doing honestly a lot of the work that I hear a lot of people complain about, right? The cold calls, the door knocks. Everyone right now is focusing on grabbing their phone, thinking that they're going to become an Instagram realtor, and then it's not working, right? You're boots on the ground. You're doing the, I guess for lack of a better word, the old school stuff that is still yields terrific results, right?
So that's my thing. My thing is new school and old school. So combining those gives you a good recipe of success, because you're always going to be in their mind. So I cold call, I door knock, I have my VA cold calling, I send postcards, I do banner ads, I do Google ads, I do Instagram ads, Facebook ads. I'm constantly running ads on social media, on the internet, for targeting specific clients. 24/7 I'm doing it. So mixing those two together is where I'm finding the greatest success. But going back to the roots of cold calling and door knocking is just something I couldn't find that's beating that out. Yeah. It's just where I'm finding the greatest success. Maybe it's just for me, but that's where I find the bread and butter to be. And if I miss out on those, I'm really not doing the work.
Awesome. Now I want to go back to one thing that you said earlier there, where you said you've already done a flip of your own. So you're working in the luxury realm. You're also working with, it sounds like, investors, and you're an investor yourself now. So what was it like to do that first flip? I mean, we all know your first property purchase personally is always your hardest, only because of the fear, the everything. Take us through how that first property purchase and flip went down.
Yeah. As you can see, I don't really like doing things easy. So my first flip wasn't like paint the walls, paint the ceilings, change the bathrooms and call it a day. It was a full house gut all the way to the studs, new electrical, new plumbing, new water, new siding, new sheetrock, new bathrooms, kitchens. Only thing I didn't have to replace was the roof and the boiler because that was brand new the year before. But full gut job from the ground up pretty much. And it was very interesting. There was also a subdivision in there that we had, and it wasn't easy, but we got it done. Thankfully, we did well at the end of it. and it was a great experience. I love that type of stuff. I love construction. I love development, and I'm excited to do some more in the future. So,
well, it's awesome too, because by going through, I mean, doing such a massive renovation, you're now very versed when a client comes to you and wants to do any sort of work. You've been through it, right? So
yeah,
you're able to say, like, you can identify things to think about in advance. You've got some base understanding now, or it depends on how hands-on you were. You've got some extreme knowledge on what it's going to take to get that reno done. Plus, because you've been through that budget, you're able to walk through and say, yeah, this will cost you probably, $25,000. This over here is going to cost you another $30,000, right? So it's really
yeah,
going to help you both as an agent, and obviously as you keep doing these flips, we all know that you're going to learn from the past mistakes, right? And by going big, I'm assuming you made a few mistakes during that reno.
um, yeah. I mean, we had a few. I wouldn't say too many mistakes, but there was things we definitely could have sharpened up and
Yep.
learned from. That would have just
Yep.
made the process go a lot smoother and had our head straight on and our plan set to really help push it along and get things done quicker and get the property sold in a timely manner.
Yeah. And that helps the bottom line at the end of the day, when you can cut the reno time, cut the budget,
Yeah.
whatever, it just adds to the bottom line, adds to the pocket later on. So that's what's going to help for future ones for sure. Now, one thing I want to go back to, you're in New York City, right?
Yep.
It is considered, in many people say, one of the most competitive luxury markets. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of agents out there, and you're in a low inventory market situation right now.
Yeah.
So what are you doing that's really setting yourself apart to be able to continue to crush it day after day?
Okay. So talk about, yeah, we have, I think it's over 45,000 agents just in like New York City and Queens and
That's
Long
crazy.
Island alone. We have a tremendous amount of agents. And in my specific area where I work, it is an area that has super low inventory, low turnover rate. Every person who has a house here knows an agent, their sister's an agent, their brother's an agent. They all know
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
So really what I have been is just pushing and pushing the cold calling. I had to hire the VA to get it when I got busy, and I made a horrible mistake, and I learned from that mistake. Was when I had like 11 listings at one point, and I think that equated to like almost 50 million in inventory. And I completely stopped cold calling, cut it out, stopped door knocking, because I was focusing on that. So that made me say, oh, I have to hire somebody to get that done for me while I'm busy. So I hired my VA, who's constantly calling. I'm calling. I started door knocking twice, 3 times a week. We picked that up. We picked up postcards more. We started running a banner ad 24/7, targeting the specific area with the specific clientele who meets that need. We're running Instagram ads, Google ads, and then getting in front of them in any way possible to really reach them. I started sending handwritten note cards to specific clients who I felt it would be good for, and it has
Right.
been one of the greatest success. I have acquired over probably $20 million in inventory from it within the past few months.
With handwritten note cards.
Handwritten note cards. It got me my first just about $10 million listing. And hopefully very soon it's going to be getting me an even bigger listing, which is going to be a one of a kind property. It just got me an under contract I just had for 4 million. It's really a great success. It's got me in the doors of a lot of properties that nobody else would be able to get into the door of, just by
Now,
handwritten note cards.
that one's a really interesting one too, because again, it's that old school method that you're
Yeah.
utilizing. And if we look at the return on investment of your marketing, what does it cost to send out one handwritten note card that gets you a $10 million listing?
Yeah. Let's see. The note cards are free. The envelopes are free from my office. The stamps are pretty expensive. They just doubled in price. I just ordered a few hundred more. It was like, you could say 43 cents a note card. So a 43 cents, that's all they ever got from me. Maybe they got a postcard if it overlapped their block, but 43 cents could get you in the door of most properties. Look, for a 44-year-old or a 32-year-old or anybody, probably maybe even a 50-year-old, they're not going to give a shit about your script and your handwritten note card that's sentimental. They're going to look at it and throw it out.
Yeah.
But to that 60, 70, 80-year-old who writes in script, who was taught script, who likes sentimental things, they're going to care about it. They're going to look at it and they're going to say, wow, I've never received this from anybody. This guy must be good. Let me give him a call.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of formulating a note that actually works. And I tested a lot. And this note that I have written down now is actually a very good one that I've been using, and I've been getting good results. You can see I actually have my note cards on me now.
There you go.
I was doing something before this podcast.
Love it. That's awesome. And you know what I love about that too, again, because I wanted to go to the cost of that, because there's so many people so focused on, you know, whether it's the bus bench ads or, you know, having a billboard. People get this misconception of what it can take to actually get out there and get these types of leads, right? And, you know, a 43-cent stamp, free cards from the office. It's really now it's just an investment of time at this point, right?
Yeah.
Doing the research on the properties, making sure you find out who you're addressing it to, or even if it's just generic, depends on what you have access to. It's gonna yield a result. And if you get suddenly a $10 million listing by writing that card, guys, there's so much opportunity out there. If you're just listening to this, pick up this one little tip here. Write handwritten note cards, just formulate it, get it down packed, and just send it off. And you never know what it'll yield.
Yeah. And my idea is, look, if you have nothing and you don't have business coming in 24/7, if you're not a referral agent, what does it really cost you to sit down for 4 hours? I've spent 6 hours from 8 a.m. to the end of the day solely writing hundreds of note cards in one shot. And it cost me nothing. You know, it cost me my time. It's hard work. Your hand's going to hurt. You're going to write out each individual, but the results are going to show at the end. That's the main thing. And if you have nothing, you have nothing to lose. You don't like cold calling, don't cold call, door knock, try note cards, just get in front of them, do open houses.
Yeah.
And there's so many different, like I used to do a lot of Zillow ads, and I used to buy out the #1 spot in my section for Zillow ads, which cost me a few $1,000s a month. And one of the greatest things I learned was not just about the clients, but using that to my advantage. And one of my very big listings I got and I actually closed on was a property that I used a line. Look, you know, I am a #1 Zillow on agent. I'm a #1 agent on Zillow. There's nobody higher than me. I have the customers. They're calling me. They're not calling the listing agents. They're going through my system, and it worked, you know?
Yeah.
So you could use Zillow leads if you want to get into a new area that you like. It was something that I did. It was another way that I had to get in, and I had to spend the money up front to get into the section that I wanted to. Because again, there's not a high turnover rate. Things aren't expiring in some of these sections that I want to work in. So you have to find another way in. If no cards aren't working and postcards aren't working, get on Zillow, join that section, leverage Zillow, say you're the #1, say you're #2, and just get in front of them and speak with them and show that you are who you say you are.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's awesome. I mean, and again, it's putting yourself out there, right? You got to put yourself out there to get the business to come in. If you're hiding behind a screen, if you're hiding behind Instagram, people aren't going to see that at first. You have to build the reputation first through the sales you've got. And that's through doing actually get out, boots on the ground, get it done. And I think, again, going back to that note card, that one just blew my mind when you said that. That's amazing. It's awesome. So one thing I want to like pivot to now is again, we're looking at luxury. You decided to go into that. What was some of the struggles, like, you know, because you're going into an industry or and I would say a market, I should say, where probably people have different expectations. You know what I mean? If you're not dealing with those first time home buyers getting into like the $500,000 range, you're dealing with these people who are sitting on multi-million-dollar properties. What did you do to try to like relate to them, and how did you kind of structure yourself in a way that built that rapport? I'm curious about that.
Yeah. So obviously, I'll give you one of the biggest challenges. One of the biggest challenges when you walk in the door as a 22-year-old, they're looking at you and they're like, this little kid is in front of me right now. Why did I even let him in my door? I mean, so once you start speaking, you really have to speak fluently and clear, and you have to know everything from the back of the hand.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things I learned from my first listing appointment with the owner of my company at that $7.8 million property, I sat there and I looked at him and I said, holy shit. I was like, this guy's a genius, because he knew every person who sold a house in that town, their first name, their last name, who bought it, who moved there, where they came from, how much it sold for, when it closed, when it went under contract. And he knew it all. And he was able to rattle that off to the homeowner. And the homeowner was a very, very smart. And these homeowners know what's going on in their community. They are small. And she was able to rattle them back to him. So I said, I got to learn that. I said, I
Yeah.
got to know what's going on. So I looked at the inventory. I looked at the sale. I looked at the names. I looked at when they closed. So now when I speak to a homeowner, I know all the information. I know who sold that house around the block. I know how much it closed for. Did I sell it? Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. I know who sold it. I knew why they sold. I knew where they came from.
Yeah.
I knew and learned the market like it was second nature to me.
Yeah.
And
then you're
knowing that,
you're walking in
yeah,
with the expertise. Like you don't sound like a 22-year-old kid, even though when they first look at you, you sound
yeah.
like you've been in this industry for a long time.
And that's what you have to display, because you have to take that worry off their shoulders that this guy's young, he doesn't know what he's doing, he's unknowledgeable. So if you could display knowledge off the bat and really show them that you know what you're doing, it's going to take off. And every time I get it out of a listing appointment, they say, they tell me, and I don't take offense to it. They said,
Yeah.
I saw how young you were, but I mean, you really know your stuff. And I was like, yeah, no, I know. I was like, I do this every day. I was like, I have to know it. And that's definitely one of the biggest challenges. And obviously, you have to fight the fact that there are teams out there who specialize in it. So I've been going head to head for the last like 4 or 5 listing appointments with one of the top teams. And it's something that I'm proud of because it shows that I'm in here now
100%.
and I'm really there. And I've been going head to head versus every homeowner is telling me, oh, you know who else came? This team was here right before you guys. And I'm like, oh, okay. So displaying that and really trying to separate yourself from them is one of the hardest things. It's still something I try to learn to this day and really use everything in my toolbox to diversify myself, whether it's just laying out my marketing plan, whether it's showing them I could do extra or showing them that I could be hands-on like a big team can't, and showing them I could hold their hand and walk them through and really make them a part of our team. Making the homeowner a part of the team is something that these big teams don't want to do. They want to do what they want. They want to be in control. But if you bring that homeowner in, it's going to show them that, wow, this guy does care more than just selling my house, getting the commission and getting out of here. And it actually helped me just get my newest listing, which was a waterfront home. And it was something that I was facing off against one of the top teams in my section. And I used that strategy and it completely worked, which was very happy. And it's something that I've seen work multiple other times.
For sure. And I mean, definitely there are some large names in the New York market for like just even the fact that there's a TV show out there that has a bunch of these large names out there and people know them from across the world. So you're setting yourself apart and you're showing what, that to them, maybe they're just a number to these large teams, whereas you've got that personal touch because you're able to come in, you've got the energy, you've got the systems in place now, and you're there for the client, which is awesome. So that kind of spurs me on to my next question. You're going up head against these teams. How often do you get that? Oh, and I'm going to say a name out there, like the Sirhan team, right? Obviously, he's well known. People give him accolades all around. Like I've taken courses with his stuff. How often are you going up against these large teams and saying, hey, like, yeah, for sure, they're awesome, but you're having to now pivot and pull them away? Like, is it those types of teams you're competing against now?
It's not like these teams are big in our markets.
Yeah.
I mean, they're big in their company markets. They're not television personalities like Sirhan and stuff like that. But in our area, everybody knows them. They do a ton of marketing. They are the team. Like if you want to sell a luxury property, they're the team to go to. They do it a lot and they have the transactions. They've been in the business for generations, so their mothers were in the business. Their father was in the business. Now they're in the business.
Yeah.
And it's something I'm constantly up against, that I have to fight these bigger teams who've been in the business. Because again, my demographic and my area doesn't have that younger crowd. A lot of the people who are in this know the agents because their parents lived in this section. They live in this section. They know the top agents. So it's really me getting my foot in the door. And then once my foot's in the door, really trying to pull them in and pull them away from them and say, look, we're completely different here. This is what we do that'll separate us from them. And showing them hand by hand. I developed a marketing plan And it was something we used for another property we had where the homeowner was very hands-on, where he wanted to see every step-by-step guide of what we
Right.
do. So I took that and I made it a part of my listing form. So now I'll tell a homeowner, look, I have a 36-step plan on how I'm going to sell your house. If this plan doesn't work and we go through every step on this form, we're going to revise this plan and we're going to sit down with our marketing team and go back, figure out where we could get more customers, what we could change to maximize your marketing power in this market. And they love it because
Awesome.
a lot of companies just say, here, look, we put you on Zillow, we put you on Luxury Portfolio, we put you on Mansion Global. But this is giving to them a step-by-step guide on what they could do. They could check it off. They could see where we are and what we're doing. And to be hands-on and look at that is something that a lot of people don't have or do.
Right.
Because they just want to do it. Like I've had homeowners that said, hey, I put you in a Wall Street Journal this week. And they'll just give me like a thumbs up emoji and call it a day. And then I have homeowners who want to approve the ads, who want to do this, who want to be a part of it. So it all depends. It's not all luxury homeowners are picky.
Yeah.
It's some are and some aren't, just like anything else in this world.
Like anything else. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So you've got the VA now and you're up against all these big teams. What's the future looking like for Nicholas Conti? And are you planning on growing a team yourself, or what's your kind of trajectory that you're looking to do? I mean, obviously you're young, so you got time.
Yeah. I would say my trajectory is definitely still focusing on luxury properties and that higher end crowd. Being also, I do some investment properties now as well. Being more towards the investment side, I'm very interested in it. I did a ground up development last year for just land. It was an awesome, loved it. I loved the numbers. I loved it all. So I would like to experiment more on that side.
Right.
And I probably would like to start a team in terms of getting a buyer's agent to come help me take my buyers out. I feel like there's a lot of money left on the table that I'm not touching because I'm not working with too many buyers.
Yeah.
And just working on that lower end stuff too, because the big stuff is great, but it takes time.
Yeah.
And again, money's left on the table by not working it.
Right.
So if I could get somebody who wants to work and hustle and do the door knocking. So I don't door knock in a $2 million neighborhood. I door knock in a $500,000 to $700,000 neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
My calling's all in the higher end stuff because they're accessible. You can't walk down a quarter mile driveway. Nobody wants to see you at their door if you're walking on their property.
Yeah.
So I door knock in those 500,000. So if I could get somebody to come with me all the time, set a schedule, be there, follow up, make the calls in that area, I mean, it'll really be a great thing. And I think they'll have tons of success. We'll get a lot of listings. So expanding my team, not to 20 people, but maybe 2 or 3 people would be a great section.
Yeah, like a really dedicated, hardcore team that's all following the same values. No, that's awesome. Exactly. I think that's a great idea too, because I agree. There's a lot, like if you're focusing on one subset, there's so much business that you could be training somebody to bring in, take a piece of, and keep growing that, right? To the point where you're happy. So no, that's amazing. No, I really appreciate all that you said here. You've given a lot of great advice, especially to the young crowd. One of the things I like to ask experienced agents such as yourself is if you could go back and start over again, what's the one thing that you would tell yourself? Like you travel back in time, you say, hey, Nick, you're getting your license. Here's the one thing that you need to do right now that'll change the trajectory. And you've already had an amazing trajectory, but what's that one thing that would help even expedite that growth?
Make more calls. I mean, that would be like, get over the fear quicker and just make the calls. Sit there, be there for 4 hours and just make all the calls that you can humanly do per day and just focus on that until you have 10, 11 listings in your pipeline, and that's something that is prime because I never like making calls.
Honestly, inherently, I don't think most people do, right?
Yeah, I would make the fun out of it. Like I'll sit there with my secretary and somebody would tell me to go F myself and I would laugh with her and like we'd make a joke out of it and then we'd keep pushing on. And you got to make fun of it or else you're going to be drugging along and it's going to be a terrible experience. But my advice would definitely be just sit down, make the calls. That's the number one most important thing you could possibly do in this business. If you don't have a big sphere to work off of, which most young people don't, unless they're working in that first time home buyers or rental market. So
No, I think
That's
that's great
definitely it.
advice. And you know, it goes back to is that it's so basic, right? It's
Yeah.
it's the most basic advice that anyone can give. And I think a lot of agents that are brand new, doesn't matter what age they are, they're focusing on the wrong activities, and that's why they're having the slow growth. You're sitting there saying, essentially, forget the website, forget the social media, forget, just pick up the phone and start calling,
Yeah.
right? So I,
Look,
I like
if
that.
one of the things that I learned is that look at a commercial real estate agent. A lot of commercial real estate agents don't even have a social media,
No, it's true. Yeah.
but they're closing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of deals. And you'll never know Jack from the block, but this
Yeah.
guy is pulling in deals left and right like he has no tomorrow. Guy barely has a website, but
Yeah.
he has 5 guys making calls for him 24/7. He's making the calls, and it's the number one thing that commercial agents do
Yeah.
for a reason, because it works. You know,
Exactly.
you don't need all that other stuff. It's great for keeping in touch, but the calls are going to be the main source of business to reach these clients. And it's just that whether it's follow-up calls or expired or cold calls or warm calls, they're all going to come into play. Even
Yeah.
follow, like a lot of my business first came from open houses as well. Just going to doing open houses for other agents and then calling them and following up with these people once
Yeah.
a week, once every other week to see if they're still looking to buy in the section, because nobody follows up either. That's one of the other
Yeah.
main things. Just keep following
Oh,
up.
yeah, I agree with you. Once you get that contact, too many people file the contact and then they go off
Yeah,
and try to get more contacts, but that
yeah,
person's then sit waiting with
exactly.
no action. And you mentioned something there, which I do preach a lot to new agents as well. If you don't have listings, that's not a problem, because there's lots of agents out there, especially in most brokerages, that do carry an inventory. Like our team, on average, will carry about 20 listings.
Yeah,
So go reach out to those agents, say, hey, does that property need an open house? And of course, that agent's not going to say no if it's going to give them more exposure on the
yeah,
market. And you get that opportunity to then lead generate and pick up. People are typically coming in for 2 reasons to an open house. I mean, there's a third, but we won't talk about them. They're just looky loos. They're coming in to either buy, or they're coming in to find out what their home is worth, right? So there's a chance you could get a
yeah,
listing or pick up a ready, willing, and able buyer, right? And again, the proof is in the follow-up, because I totally agree. If you're keeping in contact with that guy, he wants to find out what his home is worth because he's down the block and he saw this home. You keep in touch with him, and sometimes it could take a year, sometimes it could take 2 years, but you keep in touch with him and he'll say, yeah, I'm ready to go. And if you just meet him the one time, show him the CMA, and then never talk to him again, he'll probably call the next agent who he meets on the block who actually follows
yeah.
up. So no, I appreciate you say that. One more thing that I like to do with a lot of my guests here, I heard it on another podcast once. I thought it was brilliant, but a lot of us in this entrepreneurial realm, we read a lot, right? We're reading books, we're consuming knowledge. What is that one book that you would say that has impacted you the most that you would recommend someone else reads?
Oh man, there's this one book that I really loved, and not a lot of people know about it. It's somewhat talked about, but not really too talked about. But it's something, in my opinion, is such an important thing. Whether you're starting your own business, whether you're in real estate, whether you're in any type of business, and it's something I apply to anything that I try to start, whether it's like a little side business or real estate. It's the book is called Blue Ocean Strategy,
Blue
and
Ocean Strategy.
have you heard of it?
You know what? I heard about it for the first time literally on Tuesday,
Okay,
when we were doing a clubhouse room. And I think it's our friend Jan from California. He
okay.
just mentioned that book the other day.
So that book I read twice, and I could recite that book because it is really a fantastic book, and it will help you learn to diversify yourself in a crowded market. So if you are in a completely crowded market like New York City with real estate agents, you have to learn how to diversify yourself. If you're selling t-shirts and there's 1,000 t-shirt companies, you got to learn. And this
Yeah.
is going to show you how. And it really lays the map out for you, tells you what to do. And it is a life-changing book. It really is fantastic. There's nothing better than it, in my opinion.
So the Blue Ocean Strategy. Do you know who it's by?
Definitely read it or listen to it. It's good to read it because there's some graphs and photos in it that you should look at.
Yeah.
But I definitely highly recommended read. Number one book in my library.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Well, Nick, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I know you're a really busy guy, so we're going to let you get back to it. But before you go, do you have any closing comments for anyone who's been listening in?
No, I just wish everybody the best of luck. It's a hard thing to do. Like I said, try out the three calls out of area. Just burn those threes off the book, pretend they never happened, and then get in your groove and just start going. That's one of my favorite things.
Awesome. Well, Nick, thank you so much for taking time out of your day today, coming on the podcast. And honestly, I think you've provided so much valuable, not just to young people listening. Obviously, you do want to inspire the young crowd, but I think anyone listening can take a lot from what you just said. So thank you so much for spending your time with me today.
No problem, Cameron. It was a pleasure. I always love speaking with you guys.
I appreciate it. And folks, if you've enjoyed this episode of the podcast, don't forget, give us a rating over on iTunes. It does help us out. We appreciate it so much. And don't forget, you can connect with us on our socials. Nick, what's the best place they can reach you at? Is it Instagram, or where can they reach you?
Yeah, they can reach me on Instagram. My name is Nick Conti _realtor on Instagram. Same thing on Facebook. You could look at my website, Nicholas Conti at LafayetteRE.com. So I'm pretty accessible. If you guys have any questions, you would call me, text me, DM me anytime, and I'm happy to help if you guys have any questions, or if you want scripts too. I could also give you guys some nice scripts if you need it.
Fantastic. And guys, we're going to drop all of his contact information there so you can reach out to him in the show notes. So just scroll down and check that out. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for listening in. This is another amazing episode of the Manning Up on Real Estate podcast. And we look forward to bringing you even more guests on future episodes. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next episode.